was breaking up with me.
Getting the title ahead of time. Yes, your
I
computer's going.
think
Let me
so.
let me let me telegraph what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
Hi. This is the new streamingnetwork.com, WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcast, #1 internet singles talk network. And this is Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine. Glad we're both here, happily ready to go.
I know it must be Mercury. I was having terrible technical difficulties trying to log in today.
I think Mercury went to direct yesterday or today, so we should be okay if we want to use that as a reason.
Okay,
However,
I want to blame it on that.
that's kind of one of the things about breakups too, is we can sometimes find things to blame our breakups on versus take responsibility. Ooh,
Yeah, I think that we'll be covering that today for sure.
yes, yes, indeed.
So today our subject is kind of spicy about how to get over a breakup, because I thought it might be great to start with if you're the person that did the breaking up, because I agree, certainly I've been on both sides. It's harder to be broken up with. And there is some things for people who are doing the breaking up. So I thought it might be nice to talk about what it's like and things you might have to get over and in order to move on to the next relationship. And then we'll spend most of the time talking about the person who was the breakupee,
Yes, indeed.
because
Um,
there's way more recovering for that.
yeah, I think although I need to do a little self disclosure in this context, because something I used to do, I had a really bad habit when I was younger, thinking, and this is going to sound convoluted. This is the way I did things before I knew better. Um, in my especially my early 20s, my dating experience was I never broke up with anybody. I always made them break up with me because I felt like if I made them break up with me, I'd be doing them a favor, so they wouldn't feel as upset. This is a wiring in my head. I was trying to be nice to them by making them break up with me.
Yeah, yeah,
This is really, it was actually very lazy, but it was, but as a youngster, I didn't know any better. And I thought, well, because I was such a kind person, thinking I was going to be very caring, it wasn't working out. Let me just put myself in a situation where they get to walk away clean and I'll be the one suffering the slings and arrows type thing, It was,
you'll take the blows for them.
exactly. It was such a selfless act I was doing. It was such a game I was playing.
That's I've certainly done that with clients where I wanted it to be their idea. It seemed like an easier way for us to break up from
Mhm.
coaching. And so, how lovely. You're always so transparent, Barry. And I think it's one of the reasons women and men like listening to our podcast, because men are not always so easily vulnerable and so easily ready to call themselves out about stuff that they used to do. And what's great is that then you can talk about how you learned how to do it differently and why
Indeed.
maybe it wouldn't work so well now. It wouldn't be as big a benefit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, being not wanting to hurt somebody's feelings, I mean, that's admirable. And not wanting to upset them, it's kind. You're a kind-hearted person. And I think it doesn't, nobody gets to learn as much as if you really do talk about the whys. And I can tell you kind of squiggle about it that you feel more manly now that you wouldn't do it that way anymore.
Yeah. I mean, again, I was again naivety, all those excuses and so on back then, but reality, as a more learned person,
Mhm.
is is recognizing all the ins and outs of that and the excuses that I made up, and also the defensiveness. Because the thing is, as I look back at that time, I recognize how much I was unwilling to look like I was bad or wrong,
Mhm.
and to break up with somebody in my mind at that time was sort of wired together with feeling like I'd made a mistake or did something wrong. Therefore, I didn't want to admit that, so I would hide behind, being the innocent bystander sort of thing, even though I was not either one of those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we're young, we only have just so much life experience. And rather than blatantly hurt people, I think it was nice that you erred on the kindness side of the scale for sure.
Hmm.
So sometimes when you're the person that does the breaking up or figures out how to have it be their idea, and you knew it was the right thing, sometimes we can second guess ourselves, or we can feel guilty, or we can say, is there more I could have done? Could I have been nicer about it? Did I really give them the benefit of the doubt? I mean, I think that certainly comes from the side of the person that said, this isn't going to work out anymore. That after the fact, these are some of the things, because it's how to get over. So now you're past the breakup. Right. What are the things that could be getting in your way? Because the point of getting over a breakup is to heal and hopefully move on. Right. So this is kind of what could keep a person that's done the breaking up from healing and learning and then moving on with some new information.
And the thing with that also is this sense of learning from I'll say learn from the mistakes, I don't use that term, but learning the lessons of what happened before you don't want to do again. So you can basically not repeat the same thing again and again. There's also, I want to add this other piece to the conversation too. I do know as I got more further down the path, the breakups that happened when I didn't choose to break up, I was often sometimes oblivious, which also happens when you don't know why you were broken up with in the first place. And I went through that experience a few times. I can speak to that as well. So getting over the breakup can be more challenging in a way because there's like no clarity of what the reasoning was. I mean, hopefully your partner, if they break up with you, is kind enough, is honest enough, is blunt enough to share with you why they broke up with you. So you've got at least some grist for the mill, so to speak. You've got some material you can work with and understand and perhaps see where you may have gone off track, or maybe you can improve or refine or change. The thing is, and I've shared this before in the broadcast, for me, my experience was the 3 relationships that I had in a row where the same experience happened, the breaking up, where they broke up with me every time. It was clearly my feedback, my lesson I learned, and it took me 3 relationships to figure that one out, which for some people is too many. For some people, it's like, lucky I got that done there quickly. Yeah. But the key was, though, is that the 3rd time she was, in quotes, kind enough, blunt enough, direct enough, hurtful enough to tell me the reasons I was wrong. Yeah. But it gave me something that actually was the kindest thing in a way, because I got to see what I was missing, what I was doing incorrectly, so I could change. Because without anything to work with, I didn't know what to do differently. And that's the challenge, is if you get broken up with and your ex-partner doesn't offer you anything and nobody gives you any clues, it's like you're walking in the wilderness. You have nothing to work with to navigate back to wholeness. So that feedback, as much as it's painful, upsetting, distressing, all those things, can be the kindest thing ultimately, because it gives you something to work with.
Yep. So important, because I continue to hear people say, I don't want that to happen again. Right. Or I'm not going to do that again. And I always say back, great, that's a really good idea. How are you going to do that? Mm-hmm. And they give me a blank look usually, because they're not sure. They're not sure what happened. They're definitely not sure how to have something different happen. So then they go off into the world going, well, I'm not letting that happen again. And then it happens again. Right. Like, why does the same thing keep happening again? Because you didn't make a plan on how to make it different. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's a saying about the person that walks down the road and they step in a hole. Oh, yeah, and then they come down the same road and they step in the hole. And they finally go, oh, look, there's a hole and I'm stepping in it. And then they go, oh, there's a hole, I could walk around it. But this could take months and years, as you said. I mean, you think 3 times, is that short or is that long? It was the perfect amount for you. So you finally have walked around the hole a few times, and then you're like, I think I'm going to change streets, find a street that doesn't have a hole in it, so I don't have to make the effort to walk around. And yes, they tell this story because everybody laughs at that story because it's so visual about a hole in the ground. Mm-hmm. And then when you think, oh, what's the hole in the ground in my way I handle relationships, the way I talk to the other person, the way I feel about myself, the way I don't feel about myself, because that's the crux of why the same thing keeps happening over and over.
Absolutely. Yeah, that story does fit very well. And I definitely did choose a different street ultimately. The other
Yeah.
part that I will speak to as well, because what else comes up, as I mentioned earlier, about how you may not even have any understanding of why you broke up or why they broke up with you, is there's the temptation to feel like the innocent bystander, like, oblivious, or nothing happened. It wasn't me. They something changed in them and they left. It's all up to them. I'm not changing. It's like, well, yeah. And what if you do have some responsibility in the breakup, in what happened? Then it's time to start looking to do some self-investigation. And that's what you and I both do with our clients, is we can definitely help you navigate looking at, okay, so what were the symptoms? What were the clues that maybe you didn't get a direct clarity of communication from the person saying this is what you did wrong or whatever that was, but you can self-diagnose and notice for yourself what it is that maybe where they started pulling away, or what started happening, or where things like that started changing. So you can get a sense of what it is you can do something about. Because that's the thing, is when a breakup happens, regardless of who did it, who caused it, who called it done, both parties have opportunities to navigate and learn from what happened, do things differently going forward.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about getting a breakup, if you're the person breaking up with the other person, you may learn to look at, okay, what choices did you make to be in that relationship in the first place? Do you want to choose differently going forward? And we'll get into that later on. So both partners in the breaker and the breakee, have things to do before they move to the next relationship.
Yes. Figuring out the why. That's your part. So I've told the story before that when I was dating, before I met my late husband, and continuing now that I'm dating again, when people talk about their past relationship and gosh, what happened? And usually, most of the time, they talk about what the other person did wrong and their part in it. And okay, I know there's two people. And then I say, and what do you think was your part? And it was all over the board. The people who, my part, that was always fascinating because they had never thought of it. And then sometimes they'd come up with something, not very often. So when this came up with my late husband and he talked about his 2 divorces, and I said, gosh, what do you think happened? And 100% he took responsibility. He didn't say one negative thing about them or who they were, what they did or didn't do. He said, this is what happened in each of them individually, and this is what I learned from each of them, and I am not doing any of that stuff again, and this is how I'm not going to do it. This is the personal arrangement and commitment I've made to myself. And I was like, wow. And when I got to know them, I saw the other side, because there's always 2 sides. That's why I asked, I'm okay hearing their side, but tell me your side. And the people who don't see their side are the ones that will continue to keep getting in the wrong relationship for them. It's not necessarily that the person's a bad person. It could be just they're not the right person for you, but if you keep picking I did for a long time before I learned how to be different, which is how I became a coach, that I learned how to stop picking the people that weren't right for me and I wasn't right for them. But I had to look at me and what I was thinking and what I was believing and how I was behaving to be attracted to and attract the wrong kind of people for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that thing mentioned about 3 relationships that happened in a row, I was absolutely willing partner in all 3 of them. And again, as I said, the same thing happened. Well, the reason the same thing happened because I made the same choices in that relationship. So I know very clearly, and again, because we, both done this work, we know enough to know that we can't sit there and pretend nothing was our responsibility. It's like, no, we know full on what we did and what we created. And I had the same experience those 3 relationships, even though one was very brief, but the other 2, the one that the book ended it, were all the same type of, and it's interesting to look back and go, visually, all 3 women were very different, height, build, coloring, all that stuff were all different. But what attracted me to them was exactly the same thing each time. Inside. And it was the thing that did it is what caused the problem in the first place. So I know that I chose the spiral to go down, so to speak, because I just didn't choose more wisely in those cases. And so absolutely, when I meet somebody, I want to sort of check to make sure they're not like that.
Yeah. You know the right questions to ask ahead of time.
Exactly. I know the hole is there, so to speak.
Yes. And we don't know the right questions to ask if we haven't asked them of ourselves.
Right.
So even people who, the reason they ended the relationship or the relationship ended was because they're a terrible person. They're a narcissist or sociopath or a psychopath. I mean, these are diagnosable, unhelped, you can't help them people, no matter how nice or loving or caring you are. And Why do you pick them? Why do you go out with them? Continue going out with them? Why do you get in a relationship with them? Why do you marry them? Why do you have children with them? That is 100%. You're pointing the one finger, the three fingers are pointing here. It's 100% your choice. And when you go, ew, what kind of a person chooses that? I mean, it's not a pleasant conversation to have. What kind of person does that make me? Oh my God, I must be so broken. And okay, we can have that conversation. I give you 10 minutes. And then we're going to move on to, you can choose different because now you know it's you. It's not permanent. There's nothing permanent about you. You can now choose, learn, heal, be able to do something completely different because you'll start believing and thinking something different inside of you. So certainly one of the biggest steps to get over a breakup is to really dig into, whether you do it on your own or with a coach like us or a therapist or something, to what was your part. That is that's the foundation, because yes, your heart's broken. Yes, you're sad. Yes, you miss whatever future you thought you were going to have with them. Geez, it's sad, and you were attached to them physically and emotionally and mentally and maybe even spiritually. That's all normal and understandable. And you get to do that alongside of, what am I going to learn about me so that I now know how to not do that again? Well,
Right.
that's the road. And people are like, oh, do I have to really do that too? Can I just be sad? You have to.
No.
It's good to do them at the same time.
This quote, like, once bitten, twice shy. If it only applies to relationships, it'd be so much easier, because most of us tend to repeat the same thing more than once. So the understanding that when you have something happen in a relationship, because and I know we'll talk about this, and they'll talk about other shows about serial dating, where basically we're going to leave one relationship and we think the next relationship is going to fix everything, and we'll find the next person who's going to help us heal. And people go, and I say that's very romantic, but it's not effective. It's not healthy either. You don't want to dump all your stuff on the next partner. That's not healthy. You're not respectful. So to take the time after a breakup to really do, I hate to say it this way, but a post-mortem, so to speak. What killed the relationship? What was the cause of decline? What was it that caused the breakup? Whether you're the breaker or the breakee, what is it that you are aware of, what you can learn from what happens to you if that relationship didn't work? Because most of us after a breakup don't want the same relationship again. So it's like, what is it you learned going into that relationship that gives you clues not to do the same thing again going to the next one? So the time between relationships is the time to do, quote, the work, to really start to transform your experience so that you choose a different partner next time that isn't like the one you had before. Vital.
And often I'll hear women say, I'm going to work on myself. That's a really good idea. What are you going to do to work on yourself?
Right.
What was the parts? Was there lack of self-confidence? Was there lack of going to enough places where you'd meet different kinds of people? If you keep going to the same place, you're going to meet the same kind of people. What kinds of things do you need to work on, look at, think about doing differently? And the word I want to emphasize here is break. So if you think of, you break your arm or your leg or your toe or your something, everyone knows you need to give it time to heal. First, it has to heal. And then sometimes you need some physical therapy and some ways of easing back into it. Because so many people are like, I broke up, I'm going out tomorrow looking for another person, with no healing. So if you think of it like you need a sling for your heart, or at least your feelings, then think of that as you need some healing time, and then maybe some physical therapy time, so that you get a chance to even be stronger and more knowledgeable. It's funny, when my brother and sister-in-law had ortho surgery, and they both went to this physical therapist person, and they're like, oh my God, how did we get to this age and thought we knew how to walk, and we had no idea how to walk right? They had no idea. They were walking completely wrong. They were moving their legs wrong and swinging their arms wrong. Well, here's a basic thing we've learned when we were kids and done forever. And it turns out there's a better way to do it. So to think about, there's a better way to get in a relationship. There's a better way to vet a relationship, to vet another person, to make sure, are you whole? Are you a whole person before you go looking for another whole person? So I just am so a fan of talking about physical therapy now, because they're just like, Yeah, you want to move your body efficiently, and Barry and I want to help you move yourself efficiently through dating so that you'll
Yes.
stop having breakups that break
Well,
your heart.
another piece I like to that, because that's so key and so vital. I love the idea of the learning how to walk again. It's like the same thing as learning how to date again. It's the same idea. So I love that.
Mhm.
Another part also is that oftentimes we choose someone to date or someone to meet or someone to fantasize about based on certain criteria. And so for ladies, they may be looking for a certain sort of bad boy type person. And then you wonder why you always end up disappointed because the guy cheats on you or some other stuff because he's living the behavior of the bad boy. I mean, that's an extreme example, but that's the kind of thing we carry. We carry these fantasies about the certain person we want to be with. And when they exhibit the behavior we don't want because it's part of the personality you attracted, we don't realize we have responsibility about choosing differently next time. So that piece is vital as well. But one piece I want to bring up is this is one of the things I learned big time for myself, and I've worked so much with my clients about this, is the challenge of looking for the sort of love we think we should have had because our parents did a certain thing before the way they loved, the modeling they gave us because the way they dated or related to each other became this template that we use ourselves without realizing it. Because that's the other part is we don't have in school relationships 101. You have sex education, which is interesting, but you don't have relationship education, which is kind of sad. So where do we learn relationships? Basically by watching the adults around us when we're kids. It's kind of the imprinting we get, like any sort of learning. So if you look at your parents and the way they're related and they notice your own relationships mirror that, which might be quite common, you might notice,
Yep.
that's when you notice, is that good or bad? Because if what your parents had doesn't work for you, but you're still mirroring that, maybe you want to make some changes again during the break, during that time in between. So looking at what your programming, your automatic defaults are, so you can change those things for something better.
Oh my goodness, that's such a good point. And then I know I've met people who they did the opposite on
Yes,
purpose,
indeed.
and and they hadn't really looked at, does the opposite fit me?
Hmm.
Maybe what they did doesn't fit you. Does the exact opposite fit you? Maybe there's somewhere in the middle, a little bit of both,
Yeah.
because just reacting isn't usually very helpful.
No.
You have to really, but people don't think. They just, well, when I look back, I kind of see there was sort of this thing, but they were so cute and they had all these good things about them. And what I tell people is, if there's all these good things and there's this thing you're like, then you need to talk about it. But they don't want to talk about it because they don't want the good stuff to go away.
Right.
And what I've learned is, if there's something that's really hard, it's just going to get harder. It's
Hmm.
just going to get harder. And that makes me really sad, because often if you say something, especially if the woman says something to the man, he will do his best to try. He just
Yeah.
will. So the other thing too, when I have people that talk to me about breakups, they weren't together very long and they're devastated. And I
Hmm.
say, well, maybe one of the things you can make a pledge to do next time is to not give your heart away quite so quickly when they haven't qualified yet. You really don't know that there's somebody to give your whole heart to. You could give more attention and more thoughtful, and then just see, because if you're devastated every time, you might be just moving too fast.
Right.
And so that's another way to get over it, is to say, maybe I need to move slower. Maybe I need to ask more questions. Maybe I need to feel more confident to ask those questions, because often it's a lack of confidence that we don't want to ask the hard questions. That's such a hard question. I go, I know, but how does it feel to keep having to break up with people because you haven't had the hard conversation? I mean, they're
Absolutely.
limiting themselves. It's very sad.
But the thing, how can I say this? The thing that I love from our perspective, we get to see what's possible. But there are so many people who basically are going through this process again and again, hoping for a different result, and we can see what they can do differently. But it's just that, it's in a way, it's that sadness of watching them and knowing that if they only looked up, if they only took one step this way instead of that way, how much their life would change for the better. That's the challenge and the gift we have of our insight, is that we know enough over the years of our own experience and also working with clients that we can see how to navigate this path in a much healthier way. And it's like we didn't learn this ourselves from the get-go. We had to go through our own journeys. So we can help you do the same thing. And the thing about this breakup piece is a lot of times people look at breakups is the chance to just feel sorry for themselves, curl up with a pint of Haagen-Dazs every night for a week to get over the person, or go to the bar and drink, depending on your preference, and then find somebody new. And the thing is that I suspect for a lot of people, they're not necessarily looking to do something better the next time. They just want somebody new. And the thing is, for most people, and if you're watching this, you may be one of those most people, is that when you do, in fact, meet the new person, within a few months, it's the same old thing happening. Nothing actually changed. Even though it's a new face, it's the same pattern, the same experience. I know I went through that myself. It's the thing that happens because we haven't changed ourselves. And just by changing partners doesn't guarantee that things are going to change for us either. So the fact that it may look like a different person, even if you intentionally go someone so different from the one before, that it cannot be the same, yet somehow it is, there's a clue that the common denominator is your own stuff. And so in the relationship paradigm, our journey is always about, in a lot of ways, about self-reflection and self-awareness. And during the breakup time, that's where it comes into play more especially.
So, yes, so important. So I hope that when you're listening to this and watching this, that you're really hearing, we're acknowledging that your heart hurts and that your emotions hurt and that you're sad and it was real and now it's not there anymore. You need to grieve. Part of the breakup and getting over it is to grieve and be sad and wish it was different. And then along with that, that's the thing, we're seeing dual at the same time, looking into what was my part? How can I grow from this? What can I look at learning to do differently next time so that you'll feel, because the problem with just staying sad is you're going to lose hope. So thinking, wow, I might be able to do something differently next time, not just because they're a new person, but because I'm developing some new skills, it'll give you some hope. The other thing to help you get over a breakup, and I have to say this out loud, is don't stalk them on social media.
Oh, God, yeah.
It just pokes the wound. I know. It's really tempting. My teenager goes, come on, just look. I haven't done it for a while. It's been years now, but I was really good at it. And she's like, oh, just look. Then I would just get upset.
Right.
They were doing something without me with somebody else, and how dare that. That was not helpful. I am here to tell you nothing good came of it ever. Even though she'd say, just one more time, that teenager inside of me. I never stalked as a teenager. I guess I had to start doing it as an adult. I certainly got good at it. I was fascinated how good I was at it. So call a friend. Get a sponsor. That's what I finally had to do. I really want to do this, and I'm calling you instead. Talk me down off the cliff. Because it's hard to do on your own. It is. I know. And I have really good willpower. And I was amazed at how hard it was. And I said, I don't have to do this by myself. I can have somebody help me. So please don't. Please unfriend them, unfollow them so that they don't pop up in your feed. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I couldn't believe how hard it was. It was hard not to look, and then it was worse after I looked. I had to just stop.
That's probably, it's funny because I look back and going, okay, when I'm in a dating life, we didn't have social media. So it was something realizing, that's such a big piece now, because we are so enmeshed in people's lives through social media, through the online platforms, that it's so difficult to avoid them sometimes when you've gone through a breakup and you haven't done that. So part of the breakup ritual may in fact be, and I recommend highly and agree with you, some sort of distinct separation from them in person, block their number on your phone. I mean, all the things you can do, because and there's going to be a part of you, absolutely, like you said, that is just like, what if, maybe, if only, that lamenting part of us that want to get back, because there's all the good stuff happening in a relationship too, because it wasn't all bad, of course. But the breakup is kind of the full stop at the end of the statement. You can't go back and rewrite the statement. It's changed. You've moved on. And they probably moved on faster if they broke up with you. So to be caught up in the place where you want to go back and fix things is a trap. So to really do things to end the communication on all the levels you can, just to be free. And if you just want to do it for 30 days at a time, you can do that as blocking for a month sort of thing. So you just be in your own space away from them. And I love the idea of a sponsor. That's such a great idea. I mean, kind of in a way, you and I would be that for them as clients. But there was something that came up that you said earlier, which I want to really go back to reemphasize, because you jumped into it. I totally missed it before we said it. Is the grieving process, because the thing is, when a breakup happens, it is not mechanical only. It is actually more emotional than anything else. And part of the challenge is when we go through breakups or a loss of a partner, is the grief that shows up. Oftentimes we can't adjust to. Like we want to shut it down or put it down or hide it and move on, or we want to stay in the place of shock and horror that, or oh, there's another word came out, it wasn't there, but anyway, the shock and horror of basically losing the partner, of not being there anymore. That we just want to be numb. It's safer to be numb. But the true reality is that the only way the heart can heal, the only way you can be fresh and available to any sort of relationship, is to allow the grieving process to happen in its own way. And grief, as we talked about in previous episodes, when I was talking about my work with grief counseling, is having its own path, like the ocean. The waves happen the way they do, and you can't predict how they're going to work. You just know they are. And grief is working the same way. The different parts of grief happen in the order they happen. They happen in the amount of time they happen. They happen as much as they need to happen until you're done. And so for grief, some people think, well, it's going to take 3 months and I'll be fine. Or it's going to be something I'm going to handle with just be upset and I'll be okay. It's like, no, grief has its own pathway. And the thing with grief is it doesn't care how much you try to stop it. In the sense that the grief is part of, because the one way I look at grief is it's really comparable to the amount of love that you had, which is good news and bad news. The good news is that's how powerful it is. The bad news is that's how powerful it is. So recognizing that grieving is something that you'd better off be facing honestly and authentically to let it go through you, so you can be free to love properly again. That's part of the getting over a breakup, fundamentally. So make sure that was anchored.
Boy, that is so true. And people get confused. So they'll say, there's no steps. It's not linear. And they keep saying there's steps. So I'm going to say this out loud. Kubler-Ross came up with steps that for people that were dying. People that are dying, everybody's going to die someday. We're all sort of in the process. But the people who have kind of a date, that they know there's sort of a date in weeks or months or years, need to go through these. They're going to die.
Right.
It's so helpful. It's healthy. I've walked with it with people. But I got to tell you, the person that's left behind, no. There's nothing linear. There's no steps. I mean, you can certainly use the steps and go, yeah, I'm going to get angry and I'm going to bargain, but they're going to be all over the place. There is no in order. There's no order at all. It's a big, huge mess, and it's just how it is. So when people go, I must be doing it wrong because I'm not having any steps, or I keep going back, the person that's still here in your body and or still alive, but if it's that they're still alive, but they're just not with you anymore, being left, there's nothing linear about your grief. You're going to go through a bunch of steps over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And you're going to have tons of feelings that are a big mess. And I love the way that it comes in and it goes out. And then sometimes it's a tsunami and it'll knock you over. And what I just said is I have a boogie board sitting there. And if I can grab it, maybe I can stay above, or I'll at least pop up sometime. It's not going to completely swamp me. Yeah. So knowing that gives people permission that there's no wrong way to do the grieving part. The only thing that we would suggest is that you don't not do it.
That's the only way to not do grief. Yeah.
So specific about that. And that's the hard thing. If you eat Haagen-Dazs or you go to a bar, it will numb it, and you're just putting it off. It's going to come up. You're going to feel it now or later. You might as well do it now. And if at the same time soon, you can do some healing at the same time and think, all right, how can I do this differently? What am I going to do different? What am I learning from this? What am I going to learn from this? How am I going to navigate this differently next time?
Yeah.
So it's such a messy ball when you have a breakup. There's so many pieces. And that's what's helpful, I think, about this, that when somebody's recently been broken up with, or it's been a while and they're like, oh, that's why I'm still feeling this way, or to get prepared. We've talked so many preventive things that can help people really heal a relationship and move on or make it even stronger. And if there's times when you're like, yeah, this was not good. Now that we got to know each other more, we discovered this isn't going to work. We're not the right people for each other. Well, nothing is bad about that unless you stay. It's how you let go.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have I've had a number of couples that I've coached through very healthy ends in their relationship going into divorce. They stopped fighting. They stopped being angry with each other. They became much more partners in the leaving. And they'd been kind of adversarial in their relationship because it turned out they really weren't right for each other. They got married for a bunch of reasons that they hadn't really thought about, or they changed too much and now it wasn't going to work out anymore. But you really can end a relationship on a much less rancorous way than most people think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is the thing also. I mean, that there's been such a rise in the last decade or so where mediators got involved in ending relationship, ending marriages rather than divorce attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the indication that sometimes a relationship can end from an equitable place, a place where there's more peace between us. And the challenge is oftentimes the breakup happens before there's a chance to make peace with each other. And a conscious relationship will be wonderful if both partners had a chance to look at each other and go, you know what, this isn't working out. We're trying if we can. It's not going to line up. Can we leave in peace and a place of harmony with each other? Because that would be ideal. Because that's a rarity, to say the least. And so the challenge that people face when they go through a breakup or a loss of a partner, because we are talking in that area as well, is how do you navigate forward? Starting to realize, like you said earlier about the physical therapy, is that you're learning how to walk again on your own 2 feet versus leaning on somebody else.
Yeah.
And I talk about the work about conscious relationship being where you walk side by side on your own 2 feet rather than you're walking in mesh with each other, where you're leaning like an A-frame. It's like the thing is, in a healthy relationship, this is the gift of being autonomous in yourself and standing your own 2 feet. But also the challenge is that can you be so on your own feet that if the other person did leave, you'd be okay? Because some people feel like when they're in a relationship, you must be so enmeshed with each other that the other person goes away, you'll fall apart, which unfortunately is what happens for a lot of people. And so again, as you mentioned earlier, and you put it so clearly as well, how grief works is it works the way it does. It isn't it has key components of it that do show up, but how they show up, what do they show up, how and when they show up is up to grief, not up to ourselves, which is one of the challenges of being human. And so the paradigm of being in a relationship and getting over somebody is that there's going to be stuff to clean up afterwards of some sort or other, whether it is your own guilt, your own feelings, what you should have done, could have done, would have done, stuff they should have done, would have done, could have done that you don't feel good enough about because they did it to you and you felt victimized. All these things that get stuck in a bag that you walk away with, almost like, you leave the house and this will get to leave with this bag of stuff, is stuff you want to unpack and resolve. And it doesn't have to be done in 10 minutes, but part of the journey of going through a breakup is that it's you getting back right with yourself. And it may take 6 months, may take a couple of years even. But the reality is it will, again, like grief, it happens as it happens. So be okay with yourself and be kind with yourself when you go through this process, because ultimately being ready for a new relationship is something that happens when it's meant to happen, not because you think it should happen inside a certain amount of time.
Yeah. So such helpful points, Barry. And what I have found too, for me personally and my clients when I'm working with them, is the healing, the long range backwards healing that can happen of old wounds that happen with your parents or other relationships before, that make you so much more solid to move forward in your life in general, and certainly in your next relationship. That's one of the biggest gifts you get with this introspective part about what was my part. And you're like, why do I want to look at that? Because the healing opportunity is amazing. It's huge. And why pass up that opportunity? And if you find somebody like Barry or I to walk aside you as you're doing it, you will come out so much feeling better about yourself on the other side. I mean, certainly when you first look at it, you're like, yuck, and you might not feel as good about yourself then. That's just part of the journey, because people don't change. Did you see the thing I put up on Facebook that Elizabeth Gilbert, she says the only way people change is when they finally go, I've had it with my bullshit or whatever it was, made me laugh. It's So I had to put it up again.
Yeah.
Because that's it. We finally have to go, I'm just sick of the story I'm telling myself. I'm sick of things not being good. I'm sick of having the wrong people. I'm sick of whatever. I've had it with whatever. That's what pushes us to finally make a change and
Absolutely.
to look at, all right, I'm going to look at the hard things. I'm going to look at the things that are getting in my way, that hole. I'm going to finally acknowledge that there's a hole in the street.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that's such a gift in a way, is that when it does happen, that's when you find there's people around you can help you. And yes, we two are two of the people out there can definitely help you with this. But it is something where you've got to go through your own journey to get there. The thing I'm very clear about too is like you're saying with referring your clients out, or saying that when your clients choose out, I definitely have a I won't say a higher bar, but I have a criteria or definitely a validation about what client wants to work with me. I have criteria to work with in the first place. Same as a relationship. We're going to both be agreeing that what we're moving into is going to be working. And so it's not, I won't with just anybody, because unless you're willing to do this work and willing to face yourself in the mirror honestly and authentically, then we won't be able to even start to get working together. So same as in relationship, you want to work through your stuff. Same as working with a coach or a guide like ourselves. You want to be ready for that, because we both go deep.
Yeah, we do. And
Yep.
the change, I mean, you see it too. When people get to the other side, they couldn't even imagine how good it could be.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea. I couldn't even have imagined. I couldn't have even conjured it up. I thought maybe, but it is even better than that. So
Yeah.
it's so worth the journey.
Mhm.
So if it's happened to you, you've had a breakup and something has broken your heart, then why not say, all right, today's the day. I'm going to finally look at it. I'm finally going to do something different. I'm going to learn something different so that this will stop happening. And all the relationships, because that's the thing. It's not just your romantic relationships. Don't you hear that all the time, that so many of all the relationships in their lives are just better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does translate to all, because as I said before on talks, every relationship is basically reflecting the one that's in the mirror. Your relationship yourself is the one that has to transform, because everything around you will make a shift to match that as well. And so not just romantically, but family, business, social, all those relationships will change as well. So it's a bigger impact you have.
Yeah. And they also start feeling more self-confident, more able to navigate in the world with a better sense of what's important to them and how to get it in still a nice way. I mean, truly, when I learned to finally stand up for myself and not let people take advantage of me, because I was letting them, that was my permission. And when I stopped doing that, I continued to still be the same nice person I always was. I just have better boundaries now. And that's one of the things you can learn when you look at what caused the breakup. Were you too overbearing? Were you too permissive? I mean, there's so many things that we just do automatically because it was how we were raised or how we've learned how to be in relationships as we were growing up with friends or other romantic relationships. And boy, once you say, oh, this is who I am, this is who I am at my core, and I'm going to always be nice. And I would like to react differently to the people around me. So I can still choose to do that in a really nice way.
And maybe you'll start learning that when someone says, if you love me, you'll do it this way, you can say, no, that's not going to work for me. Because you're being loving yourself. You're loving who you are. Because the challenge is we do tend to oftentimes buy into other people's behavior and not stand true to ourselves. And part of this journey of moving on from past relationship is to choose a different pattern, a different paradigm, a different street to walk down. So you don't go down the same old pattern, the same old thing again. But it's so tempting sometimes to just go, that's familiar. I'll just go back to what's familiar. It's comfortable. Well, yes, it is, but it's not uncomfortable along the way too. And so this journey of evolving in your relationship paradigm is something that is a gift you can have. And yes, you can have that in the existing relationship as long as your relationship is going to grow with you. But if it doesn't, that's a story. But if you're in between relationships, again, post breakup, post loss, that you don't know how to navigate going forward, this is the best time to do the work so that when you do go forward, you raise the bar, raise the standard, and raise your own vibration for what you're going to have in a relationship. And you'll choose healthier boundaries. You'll choose more clarity and communication. You'll choose the things that really work for you ultimately. And you'll become a better partner because of it.
You'll stop choosing streets with holes in them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Barry and I are here whenever you want to talk. We'd be so grateful if you would call us so we could help you with this. We could be your sponsor.
I like that term.
Thank you. I had two of them, boy, because if one of them wasn't available, I needed to call. I said, I've never felt addicted. I don't tend to have addicted person, but I said, I got a little taste of what that felt like to feel so drawn. It was really, I said, well, I guess I needed to do that so I can appreciate a little more how people that really do have addictive personalities, how out of control it can feel. So, okay. I said thank you to it for that reason, and I moved on.
There you go.
And I don't do that anymore. So the way to get a hold of me is the best way is through my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com. And you can click on what's holding you back from love. And there's 10 brief questions to ask, and then it'll give you access to my online calendar, and you can schedule at your convenience a conversation with me, and we'll talk about what you didn't like and what you'd like to be different and how that can happen, because it can happen. Also, you can join my mailing list, so you'll get a repeat of this podcast and updates about what I'm doing in my life. And if you scroll to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see the symbols for all my social media. You'll see Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube. And did I say more? Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Twitter.
Twitter, X, and where knows what it is. And Barry, please tell people how to get a hold of you.
Indeed. So, like Christine, I have a website and ways they get in touch with me. But if you go to my site first, on my homepage of my website, there's a link to get in touch with me for a session to start the process in motion. And basically, you fill out a questionnaire, same as Christine. I have a questionnaire as well, and you can fill that out, get on my calendar, and we can schedule time to talk and just see where you are and what you're looking for, and if I can help you with that. If you want me to be a sponsor, so to speak, which I love that term. At the bottom of my homepage, there's a opt-in for my email list, which I do recommend you do, so you can stay in touch with what's going on, and I can definitely be sending you information every week, what I'm doing, what I'm working on, our replays of our shows, and everything else we're doing as well. On social media, actually before social media, on my website also is I have a quiz that I created, which, so if you're in between now after a breakup, and you're not sure if you're ready for the next relationship, I definitely encourage you to take my quiz, which is a relationship readiness assessment quiz. If you're ready to navigate the next piece, if you go to barryselby.com/quiz, you can just take that quiz, and it doesn't cost you anything. All you got to do is really answer the questions honestly, and you'll get a rating of where you are in different parts of your life. And if nothing else, that'll help because it gives you a reality check. If you want to reach out to me, you can email me directly at barry@barryselby.com. And on my social media platforms, apart from, let me do this other way, on Instagram and Threads, it's the real Barry Selby, but everywhere else, including YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, it's Barry Selby, my name, which is easy to find. And definitely follow us on YouTube, because I have all my replays of this show and all the other things I do on YouTube, and I've got 1,500 videos up there to keep you busy. And if you are in that place after a breakup and you're not sure what to do, either one of us can help you with it. Both of us can help you. It's worth getting support and guidance now, so you don't go back and do the same street with that hole in it again.
Yeah. And I'd like to just say, you can send me a personal email too at Christine@theperfectcatch.com.
Indeed.
And we are here every week at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern, and all the times in between. And we'd love it if you'd like and share this podcast with other people that you think might be interested in hearing the information, because they've been broken up with probably more than once. Mm-hmm. And also like and share on our YouTube channel. If you find people that you think would be interested, please tell them about us as well.
Absolutely. And of course, you can listen to us when you go on out on the road, or go to the gym, or go to the store, because we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everywhere else as well. So not only can you see us video-wise on YouTube and Facebook, you can listen to us when you go out as well. So take us with you.
We'd love to go with you everywhere, all the time. We've Absolutely. Been told people are binging on us. It's pretty exciting.
As long as it's not stalking, it's okay.
Yeah, binging. We're binge-worthy.
Yes, indeed.
So we will see you next week with another fascinating subject.
You will. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.